Hi, welcome to CCTV, Channel 17, live at 525, the Preservation Burlington Show. Preservation Burlington is a non-profit 501c3 organization, and our mission is to preserve and protect the historic architecture and livability of Burlington through education and advocacy.
Hi, Ron.
Advocacy.
Advocacy.
And protect and preserve. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you? Happy March. Happy spring.
Fabulous.
Hallelujah.
You know, it's a typical Vermont spring, and if it hadn't been 70 degrees like a week or so ago, I wouldn't be as angry as I am right now. I love these like warm and cold snaps, but 70 degrees, I was ready for it to be over. And then it was snow the next day, literally the next day.
But let's talk about preservation.
Yeah. So Preservation Burlington, we have a great guest,
Yes,
a friend
we
and
do.
neighbor of mine, Chris Hadsel, Curtains Without Borders, and we'll be pulling that up in a bit. But Chris has been doing this for years, and we just got a sneak peek that she's found another one.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I have heard so much about you, and it's so nice to finally meet you and chat with you. But first, let's talk about what's coming up on the Preservation Burlington calendar before we forget, right? So April 10th at Contois Auditorium, 6 to 7 p.m., one of our board members, Devin Coleman, who is all about the modernist architecture, will be giving a speech, a talk, a presentation. So that's going to be really exciting. And then...
And that's going to be on the church that's in the
St.
new
Mark's
North End.
Church,
St.
yes,
Mark's Church.
St. Mark's
Yeah,
Church
which will be
was-
pretty cool because it's a pretty dramatic building, and I don't know when it was built. but
1950 something. It's a 50s church.
Oh, really?
I believe
Okay.
so, right? Because
Yeah.
it's modernist,
Right.
and it was built in a really interesting and unique way for church architecture. The way that the aisle and the pulpit is set up in relation
and
to
every
each other
side
in a
is
cross,
symmetrical.
right? Yeah.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. And then our guest who's coming on the April show, Jim Jones, is going to be doing a talk in April about, get this right, it's like a tongue twister, rubber tires to trolley wires, the history of the streetcar in Burlington.
Streetcars,
Right.
yeah.
So
Which is funny, though. My wife Amy always brings up the irony of the fake trolley that drives around now, because we famously burned the last one when we were so glad to be done with them.
Yes.
And now we have one
Oh.
that looks like one that's not really.
in the matter of progress.
So that'll be a really good talk, and it'll be
Yes.
interesting to hear what his background story is, like how he got interested in what
Right.
he was doing there.
And just the history of the trolleys in Burlington, and how it influenced Burlington's expansion and architecture is really
How did San
fascinating.
Francisco know to keep them? You know, everybody goes there. They love them. They ride them. They love them. And
It's because of the ad. What was it? Not the rigatoni. No, this
Rice-A-Roni.
Rice-A-Roni.
Rice-A-Roni. That's right.
Rigatoni.
Rigatoni. Same
That's
difference.
right. Yeah,
But yes. But let's maximize our time with Chris. So why don't you?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
No, it's always fun. It's always it's just fun to talk about this stuff. I see. I work at Shelburne Museum. I think everybody knows it at this point. And I go into the conservation lab, and there's always a gigantic printed poster thing of you and your team and conserving the theater curtains around Vermont.
Oh.
So I see you a couple of times a week, and I'm like, I know her. She lives right near me.
That's awesome.
Well, actually, when we first started, Rick Kirshner, who was the head of the conservation lab there for many, many, many years, he stepped up. He's always loved the curtains, and he stepped up and signed on to be president of the little baby board that I have, because we are also a 501c3.
Yep.
And he still is, 25 years later. I don't think he thought he was going to be doing it for that long, but we actually have the same 4 people who started us off. And thank goodness I don't have to deal with, a big board. I don't have to deal with people who come and go. They're still the same
That's
people,
amazing.
same treasurer, the same secretary, and the same old me, and the same, well, the conservators have evolved.
There's continuity.
Yes, there is
and
continuity.
institutional knowledge and all that stuff that's so important with
Right,
what you're
that's
doing.
right.
Well, let's take a step back for our
Yeah.
viewers who might not know about Curtains Without Borders. What is it, and how did it start? Tell us about
Well,
that.
first of all, people need to know what what we mean by curtains.
Yes.
We do not mean drawstring, red velvet, blue velvet, kind of stuff that's around
Right
here.
behind us.
No,
Yeah.
we are talking about painted scenery, some of which was at the very front of the stage and therefore had drapes painted right on it, because nobody could afford actual
Curtains
drapes.
that open.
And we're also in the era before nylon and before synthetic fabrics, so you would have been talking about real velvet. And the cost of real velvet, the miles of real velvet, even on a small country stage, they couldn't have begin to afford it. So the way that the scenic artists operated was to have a grand drape at the very front, right behind the arch. Whether it was arched or square, didn't matter. Behind the opening, the very next object would be a grand drape that would roll down, and on it would be a romantic scene from long ago and far away. And often they were castles, they were, I mean, sometimes it was romantic landscapes like Willoughby Gap, or sometimes, Venice. Venice, if you were a little opera house or even a big opera house, you wanted Venice because Venice meant opera, at least to the American public from about
Yeah.
the 1880s on.
That's what I was going to ask.
And so there are a lot of scenes of Venice, even in small country places, along with places like the Derby Line Opera House, where they have a magnificent scene of Venice. But if it wasn't Venice, in fact, it was never Paris. We have never seen a curtain
Interesting.
for Paris or London or Rome, except for Ben-Hur's chariot race. Ben-Hur's chariot race turns up on curtains all over New England.
Interesting.
And we have 1, 2, 3 of them in Vermont.
Wow.
3 Ben-Hurs. And it's because Ben-Hur was the most popular novel of the 1880s, 90s, just before the turn of the century, really.
Yeah.
It was sort of like Gone with the Wind, the generation before that.
Yes. Yeah.
Even though it's a very religious novel, very religious, but it also is full of high romance.
It's drama, lots of drama for the stage.
The drama of it all.
Yes.
And there's nothing more dramatic than the chariot race.
Right.
And so the chariot race is what turns up on 3 of Vermont's curtains, Bristol and Guilford and Westminster. And, but other than that, they're generally European influenced scenes on this grand drape. Because think of it like a beginning of a Walt Disney film in the old days. What did you first see? You saw the little castle with Tinkerbell going around it. And that little castle was right out of Europe.
Yeah.
It was right out of Walt Disney's own European background.
Right.
It's the same thing. And Walt Disney grew up with painted scenery. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what he would have known before the movies came
Yep.
along.
Right.
So it's a direct sort of continuity of romance and long ago and far away on the grand drape especially. And then sometimes the drapes are fairly plain, but lots of times they're full of frou-frou and undercoats and gilt tassels that are holding them back by some invisible hand.
All painted.
All painted, none of it actual cloth. And then inside the drapes that are pulled aside for you, sometimes by little angels or sometimes by little naked cherubs on the grand drape, inside that is a picture frame with gilt stenciling, sometimes very fancy, sometimes plain, and inside the picture frame is a picture. So you end up with a sense of depth.
Yeah.
And that's how a grand drape achieves the illusion of depth.
Yeah. Trompe l'oeil almost. Where,
Almost, but not exactly, because it is pretend. I mean, it's not like they're trying to fool you
Right.
that you're there near the castle.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
You,
some of the
you
architecture
know
we
it.
see.
Right. You know that you are outside and there. That's
Yeah.
on
You're
stage.
evoking.
And then behind the grand drape would be any number of scenes. And all of those scenes are called backdrops. But we found that at least around northern New England, local people just referred to them all as curtains. So we started calling them curtains.
Yeah.
They're not called curtains in the theatrical business. They're called drops. Or fly
backdrops,
curtains. A
yep.
fly curtain's one that goes straight up and down. But this word curtains is just what we started using. And so to us, they're all curtains. But occasionally I do get requests for
Vernacular.
window dressings.
Yes, of course.
People
yeah.
calling up saying, "Do you sell curtains?" I say, "No. We're not that sort of curtains."
Not that kind of
So,
curtain.
so what do you do with these curtains, these
So,
drops?
and
these-
also, right, so,
hey, that was my question.
well, but you,
Well, first, all right, I'll
you
answer.
sorted your first question, though.
All right, but I'll answer.
Yeah, you
First,
started
we have
this.
to find them.
How did you get interested in this?
How did I get interested? Well, as somebody famously would have said, they were there.
They were there. You stumbled on
Nobody
one.
knew. They stumbled on them, not entirely stumbly, but more or less stumbly. I was the director of a statewide organization called the Vermont Museum and Gallery Alliance. I was the founding director. And our job was to try to help people take care of collections, whatever they were. The possessions of a museum or a historical society or
A private
whoever it might
collection,
be, an organization, not individuals. And because all the collections had lots of things in common, you have to document them. You have to keep them clean. You have to light them. You have to label them. You have to whatever it is. If it's dolls or stuffed rabbits, it doesn't matter really what it is. There's lots in common.
Yeah.
So I started off with that, and in fact, Rick Kirshner at the Shelburne Museum got us a little office there. I was in the building that's now the little 1950s house across the street.
Okay.
That's where I was. And so we were interested in collections, and we worked closely with people like Paul Brune because his interest with the Preservation Trust was in the building, the
Yeah.
shell,
Yep.
the condition, the safety, the building. We were interested in what's in the building.
Yeah.
So we were very much a pair.
Yeah, you're fighting the same fight.
We were on the same side, although sometimes we wanted the same money. But we were on the same side because without the building being secure, you can't care for the collections.
Yep.
You have a leaky roof, you're
Collection's
done.
going to get ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, if you have nothing in the buildings, you have no reason for people to
Visit.
use them.
Yep.
So, anyway, as part of that, I did a lot of driving around, and I also had a traveling conservator who would go to the various institutions to find out what they needed so that we could do workshops, lots of workshops.
Yeah. Because
And-
you're training regular people that care about these
Yes,
things.
we were working with, say, the head of the Ferrisburg Historical Society, who would get together, and we'd have the Virgins, the Ferrisburg, the Charlotte, the little group get together, and they would talk about storage, or they would talk about labeling. We would do it on site with people working together.
Yeah.
It was a very collaborative kind of time. Any rate, so two things happened at the same time, or almost the same time. I was down at the Virgins Opera House with Paul Brune, and there were pigeons flying around. The whole place was abandoned, had been abandoned for a long time. And so a small group of us were standing around thinking, oh, what to do. And I had been asked to come along because on stage, leaning up against the back wall, was an enormous, filthy canvas. So filthy, you could hardly see what was on it. And in the middle of it, there was a great big hole where somebody had fallen through or stepped through the canvas. It had once been a fly curtain, meaning it went straight up and down, but you couldn't even see what was on it. It was so filthy. And it turned out there had actually been a coal-burning stove in that room for a long time at the other end of that big hall. So this was something that Paul was not interested or didn't want to deal with. He called me, and I had no idea. I had never seen anything like it. I had no idea, but I knew it was there. So I sort of filed it away in my head and thought, well, somehow I'm going to have to help figure out.
Yeah.
At the same time, my traveling conservator, M.J. Davis, was visiting historical societies here, there, and everywhere. And at that time, ADA had just come in, which meant that a lot of towns abandoned their upstairs town hall meeting room because they didn't have the money to put in a lift
Access.
or an elevator, and suddenly they were not allowed to use them anymore. So many of them sort of turned over that space to the local historical society because they could get away with not having ADA
Open to the public.
so long as their programs were where the public
Could
meet.
access.
But a lot of them use these upstairs town halls for displays, for storage, for their own documents and archives and things. So several of these, when MJ visited them to talk about their collections, said, well, and we've got this thing, this stuff on the stage. It's huge, it's dirty, it's torn. We can't even get it down sometimes. It was tied up with baling twine.
Right, rolled
Or
up.
She said they would say, well, there's these big rolls under the stage. We don't know what they are. We don't dare bring them out. Maybe they're asbestos.
Yeah.
Ooh. And so MJ, but they wanted
Just
to
lead paint.
yeah, sure. So they wanted to figure out what to do. We also had the Virgins Opera House, what to do. So MJ and I said, well, let's figure out what to do. And the only way I could think of to help was to write a grant, which is what my main job was as
Right.
director. That's what you do. So I wrote a grant to the NEA and said we would like to do a survey to just find out whether there are more of these things and what they are. We don't even really know what they're made of. We don't know what the paint is. We don't know how they work.
Yep.
But somebody needs to figure this out. And we got the grant.
And they said yes.
Amazing.
Uh-oh. New career.
It was, well, I didn't know it at the time because we really thought this was just one thing, one
Yeah.
object that a lot of historical societies had to deal with. We didn't even know about, I had never been in a Grange Hall in my life. I didn't know that every Grange Hall had these
Had
things.
these, right.
I had not, I'd registered the one at the North Hyde Park Opera House in my mind's eye, but I didn't know that actually every little opera house in Vermont, except for the one in White River, still has something.
How many are there?
There's 7.
Wow.
We have way more little opera houses than most places. Enosburg, Virgins, Derby Line. I'm losing track. There are a couple more. And there are a couple places that aren't opera houses, but they call themselves
Called
that.
them that, yeah.
They were just literally little town halls, but they wanted to put in a balcony, and they wanted to have, they wanted
They
to be the
wanted a
culture.
fancy opera
Jamaica.
house.
Jamaica
Yes.
Town Hall. Jamaica is
Been to that one.
a nothing, wide space in the road, but their little town hall is called the Jamaica Town Hall and Opera House because they had a balcony
Nice.
made fancy.
Middlebury
Very
has
fancy.
one too, doesn't it? Did Middlebury have one too?
Middlebury has become the Town Hall Theater.
Right.
They threw out their scenery in the 60s. Unfortunately, the 60s were a bad time for preservation.
In general?
Yes, across the
People
board.
Cleaned up.
Yep.
And
Cleaned
that-
up
they
throughout,
cleaned up
urban
throughout.
renewal.
Yeah,
blah, blah,
Plainfield Opera House threw out theirs. Barry Opera House threw out theirs. Oh, there's a nice story. Can I skip ahead?
Yeah,
course.
please.
About 5 years ago, I introduced the board and the directors of the Barry Opera House to a friend of mine who is a scenic artist in New York City, but born in Johnson, grew up doing summer theater in Hyde Park and with the Royal Shakespeare Festival, all this stuff. He's a real Vermonter, but he lives and works in New York City. And he's become a great friend, and he wrote a chapter in the book, The Suspended Worlds, called The Art of Scenic Art. He's a real,
Oh, cool.
he's one of the few people in the whole country who actually knows how to make the paints the way they were made 100 years ago, how to do the scoping out of the size and everything else. He's one of about 3 people in the whole country who actually know their stuff. And here he is from Johnson. We met him, I had met him. So I brought him to the Barry Opera House board. All they had was a black and white photo, nice, fairly big photo from when it was dedicated in 1911. And they had a photo of the stage with the grand drape scene of Venice.
Venice.
And it was a pretty clear photo, but it's black and white. Well, I drove Peter around to several other sites where the same artist who had done that one up in Cambridge, Vermont, Bridport, Vermont, a couple of others, Londonderry, Vermont,
Okay.
all by the same artist who had done this one in Barrie, because we could see his little signature down there,
Yeah.
so that he could see the colors, see which colors, how the palette
Continuity,
was,
what he was working with.
this particular artist is very different from other artists. So he made them a new one, 30 feet wide, 20 feet tall,
Oh, that's cool.
and they now have the scene of Venice, the same one, that they are
Replicated.
busy, they're making the side panels of velvet because it's going to hang slightly behind. They are going to have things that close and open because they need to do it quickly and electronically for their productions.
Yeah.
But right behind it is the beautiful scene of
Yeah,
Venice.
this
So when they let it
replication of
down,
what was there.
you have black on the sides. Ta-da!
That's phenomenal.
That's cool.
The only new opera house curtain in all of New England, and maybe the whole country that I know of.
And he painted that all by hand by himself.
Oh, he got help.
Oh.
And the way he got help is he teaches a class, or he teaches a group of students who are learning to be scenic artists. They take a 2-year apprenticeship, almost, so learning over in upstate New York. But part of their training is to bring Peter in for a semester and have them learn the traditional techniques, none of which they're going to use as professionals,
Right.
but they're going to know
in this
them.
day and age, but they know the backstory.
They will know them, and
background.
they will have learned how to do it, and they will have learned how to do the drawing to get the techniques. They also learn how to make stencils because so much of it is stencils.
Yeah.
So he teaches there, and it's sort of like, an English teacher making sure that the kids have got grammar
Right.
The foundations.
before they go out
The
Yeah.
foundations.
and start writing the novels.
I didn't even know a school existed like this.
Even
This is
though they're never
phenomenal.
going to think about their grammar. But at any rate, so out of nowhere, basically MJ and I decided that we would see what was out there, and Michael Sherman, who was head of the Vermont Historical Society, and MJ, and he was retiring just at that point. He and MJ actually got on the road, and I drew we did circles. We'd try to visit 4 or 5, 6 places,
Yeah.
and we had flashlights, and we'd poke around, and we would look under the stages, we would look behind, we would look anywhere we could
Counting
think.
and labeling and
And
numbering.
then take in those days a slide, take pictures of what these things were, basic measurements, how big, and basic information if you could see the artist's name on the front. So I started gathering little files of where these things were. And the next grant was to try to conserve 12 of them as a test to see if we could figure out actually
How to do
how
it.
to do this.
How many did you find in that initial survey?
Initial survey, 50 or 60,
Wow.
but actually there are 198 in Vermont.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Wow.
And we have treated every one of them except for the last,
The new one,
the new one.
which was
is
where?
in a barn in Sutton. And it was there because the Grange Hall, which had become the fire station, was finally being bulldozed. And originally from that Grange Hall, there had been a grand drape of Lake Willoughby, beautiful picture, but also with ads painted down below that some
love that.
idiot painted over with house paint. They were tired of looking at ads for businesses that had gone out of business.
Sure, yeah. Long gone.
Any rate, so there's a red border down below, but there's Lake Willoughby and all the drapery and the signature of the artist. So that one we conserved 10, 12 years ago and put it at the school because it's the only public building in Sutton.
And there was no way to uncover those old ads?
So, no, it's house paint.
Yeah.
And if you use solvent on it to get
It's
rid of
gonna take
that, it takes
everything.
everything underneath.
Yeah.
It's the curse of, anyway.
Of backing things up like that,
Yes,
I know.
of just giving up on the ads. And of course, they wish they hadn't. I mean, anybody who does it, it's happened 2 or 3 times, and it's always been with great regret later on. But at any rate, So they were about, literally the bulldozer was there, and somebody who had been an old Grange member said, let's look up in the attic one more time. Maybe there's some Grange poster or a banner or something we want to take out. And somebody got up there with a strong flashlight, and there on the far wall, in the dark and the dirt, was a curtain, all rolled on a big, heavy wooden roller.
Wow.
So they got it down, literally, while the bulldozers were
revving up.
And put it in the barn next door. And then they called and said, we don't know what it is. We'll wait to unroll. It could be totally destroyed, but we don't know.
Right.
So we came over.
You guys are like the Ghostbusters.
We are.
They called you. They're like, hey, we have
us.
this thing. We need you to
So
come.
we laid tarps out on the grass and unrolled it, and it was a street scene. A very nicely done street scene with quite a lot of damage up at the top. It had gotten wet. We can fix that. And so that's the only one that has not been treated in Vermont.
Okay. Yep.
But it will be this year. we
Yep.
hope.
Yep. Oh, excellent.
Any
So you're
rate,
still writing grants?
No, because all the grants were for Vermont. I think I at one point I figured I'd raised $500,000. Not, but that'd be sort of half from the grants. Every town had to contribute something.
Yeah, yeah. There's matching grants
Or
and stuff,
every
that sort
they
of
had
thing.
to. Yeah, they were matching, but then I managed to get the state to match some. I went to donors. I went to wonderful individuals who were
So much legwork.
incredibly generous and gave us big chunks of money. And then, but every town had to contribute. And part of the reason the NEA loved us all along was we also required local volunteers to help us. We trained them how to vacuum, how to mend. Big long tears, little tiny tears.
So much buy-in, and everybody loves
Exactly.
So all of this was
Everybody
done
loves
on
it.
site where they were
On
found to
site,
pretty
on
much
lunch
the-
tables.
it. Every little community, and they.
So it's not like you have a big barn where everything's taken and
No,
it's
no,
like,
no,
okay.
never. In fact, we never once
Moved in.
did that. I think one place in Canaan, there wasn't enough floor space in the Historical Society, so we walked it down the street to the church next door, and then use their church basement. Then it was all ready, brought it back to Canaan and put it back up for just for showing. But really, we do it on site, and we require local volunteers. We call them our curtains. What do we call them? Curtain ladies. They're usually ladies, but curtain.
I'd be a curtain lady.
I'd be a good
Right, curtain
monitor or
helpers, and we've had thousands of them. Therefore, and the point is, once we get it back in good shape and up and rolling and doing all that, somebody still needs to keep an eye on it.
Of course. That's
Now, that's tricky 20 years later.
Ongoing, yeah, I
Part of what
know.
I do is try to get in and just see how they're doing. And half the time, somebody has rolled one backwards, or they've gotten sloppy, or something, or the dirt
Yeah.
is resettled and needs
Yeah.
another vacuuming.
Yep.
But at any rate, we were given the money to do 12. And what we did is we called together everybody we could find, every conservator, textile conservators, painting conservators, objects conservators. We had a couple of nice big powwows down at the Shelburne Museum
Yep.
to say, okay, these things are 20 feet long, 15 feet high.
yeah.
How do you turn them over? How do you actually,
Yeah.
what do? You're not going to go flipping it like a bed sheet.
You can't roll it the wrong way because it will
Can't
break.
roll it the wrong way. And do you roll it inwards to protect it from the dirt, or do you roll it outwards where the paint is going to be showing? Turns out you always roll them outwards because they're all water-based paints. And water-based paints will expand just a little, but they hate to be cramped. If you cramp them by rolling the curtain inwards, the paint will want to crackle and mostly just dust, just turn dusty and thin.
Right. So you basically want to stretch them.
Counterintuitively, you want them
You stretch
to
them.
be exposed to the dirt on the
Yeah.
outside. It's just very
Oh, so
counter-
many things to think about
Yeah.
and to learn all
Learn
these
along
things.
the way, right?
Well,
Trial
and
by
we're still
fire.
learning. I mean, the part of what's kept us going, people are saying, you're still doing this 25, 6, 7
I was
years
just
later.
about to ask, yeah.
Well, everyone is different.
Yeah.
Every single one, even if it's an artist we know, a scene that we know, it's still going to have some differences, but the condition's going to be different. The stage is going to be different. Or
Yeah.
sometimes just a wall. If the stage is gone, we have learned we can put them up on any wall, roll them up, tie them off with a cleat. And my job ended up being the installation sort of person, partly because I'm the only person in the group who's not a conservator.
And you've seen each and every one all
I've seen
this
each
time.
and every one, but they've taught me how to do the mending. I'm terrible at painting. You give me a color and I can manage to make it really different. So I don't paint, but I can mend with the best of them and vacuum and clean and do all this stuff. But we also learned how to make new rollers out of good old-fashioned downspouts, the corrugated
Yeah.
metal
Yeah,
downspouts
yeah.
that are so prevalent in Vermont and northern New England, because that's what the Grangers did. They couldn't afford the wooden rollers that were
Right.
heavier and that usually were pieced together
Big,
in many
long,
pieces.
turned and pieced.
So they learned how to whack together downspouts.
That's
And
that
we figured,
Vermont
hey, if the
ingenuity.
Grangers can do it, we can do it. And it turns out they were onto something, because wooden rollers that are 25 feet long, invariably after 100 years, have
Sag,
lost their
yeah.
integrity. If they haven't actually broken, they've warped or something. So many of them need to be replaced,
Yeah.
because when they warp, they make the fabric roll up unevenly.
And it crunches.
And you just tear it all over again. So who knew? But I know that the only place that sells downspouts in Vermont is Rice Lumber,
Yes.
and there's one place in New Hampshire, and I did find one place in the coast of Maine. They're hard to find
The
these
round
days.
ones.
The
4-inch
corrugated,
rounds. Oh, the
yeah,
corrugated
the
one.
corrugated 3-inch round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And but fortunately, since we have so many Victorian houses in this part of the world, but when we've gone to do curtains in other parts of the country, or even in Massachusetts, Connecticut, there's nobody that sells that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So I have to bring them from Vermont.
So you bring a book up, and I don't know how much time we have left. Probably not a whole lot.
it's
because
winding down.
This is really
But I
great.
think we have to. We're going to have to do a follow-up.
we
and
are.
you are going to talk for us, right? You're going to
Yes,
give
so it's in July. Sometime in July, I'll be in Contois. The nice thing there is that we have a big curtain in Contois,
Yeah.
which I actually bought at an auction and brought home in the back of
wow.
my Volvo, just folded as a pile of canvas, because there was no place to open it up. I just knew it was a curtain.
Yeah.
And I knew it was Burlington's curtain because the advertisement in the auctioneer's catalog, they had a picture. And in the middle of the advertisements and the fantasy street scene, like multi-story, skyscrapers,
Yep.
right, was an ad for Brune Office Supply.
Oh wow.
It was Paul Brune's
Paul
father.
Brune's parents, yeah.
His father, who had an office supply store
On Church
that merged
Street.
with McAuliffe.
Yeah.
It became McAuliffe's, and then became blah, 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 blah. So
So you grabbed it.
I didn't see the ad. Someone with sharp eyes somewhere else saw the ad, called Paul and said, I think there's a curtain with your father's old business on it. Paul called me. I drove to Maine because the auction was like the next day, and it was pouring rain. I couldn't open it up. I just bought it for $500, and that was only because I told the auctioneer I had to have it. So we opened it $500. So
wanted it.
I was stuck. I could
Yeah,
have gotten
yeah.
it probably for $100.
Right,
But anyway,
right.
put it in the back of the Volvo, drove home, and we unfolded it on the floor in Contois with the mayor, whoever was mayor at the time,
Yep.
and Paul, and a whole bunch of people, newspapers, and CAX came, and there it was, downtown Burlington, only not like you've ever seen it.
Yeah. On
Lippes-
steroids or
Lippes,
something.
was on there, and Vermont Mattress Company, Vermont Paint Company.
What a great story.
Yeah.
So many stories. So
Oh,
many
yeah.
stories.
Each curtain has
Has
a
a story.
story.
Or
Yeah.
several,
We have
right?
to do this again. We'll have to
All
squeeze
right.
this in
So
again before and after.
I will say that I did write a book. No, because nobody else ever had. There's nothing in print about this sort of scenery. It's a Godine book. It's beautiful, and So I picked about 100 of the most interesting curtains
Yep.
from
Out of the
Vermont, New
200-ish.
Hampshire, and Maine. And it's beautifully done. And
Will you have it with you at the talk?
oh, yes, I absolutely will.
Oh,
Fabulous.
good.
Yep.
Yep.
And
Is it available on your website?
well, the website it talks about it, but we don't order through the website.
Yeah. Okay.
Most people just when we go and work on site, I bring a few, and people want them because they know what I'm talking about. But at any rate, it's been quite a wild ride. It's not quite over. I'm still doing this.
Yeah.
And
And we're grateful.
we still do it mostly in New Hampshire and Maine for the last 10 years at
Okay.
least.
Yep.
Because we were finished with
Yeah,
Vermont.
you caught up with
Yeah,
Vermont, so
yeah.
except for that last one. So now you got
Right,
the other states.
right.
That's terrific. I
Okay.
want to thank you so much
welcome.
for coming on. We'll do it again, and I'm going to be there in July.
Part 2.
And I'd like to thank everyone else for tuning into CCTV live at 5:25. I'm pointing at the words like people could see it. For more information on Burlington history, tours, events, or a marker for your historic house, go to preservationburlington.org. And we'll see everybody next month. Thanks.
Yeah.